Hi guys, Beth Ray here with MyCounselor.Online, and I'm here with Josh Spurlock. He's the director for MyCounselor.Online, and he is the author of this very good article called "What is Christian Sex Therapy?" Oh my goodness, Josh, we talk a lot about misconceptions in counseling, and I think sex therapy probably takes the cake in having the greatest misconceptions probably put on it. So, first of all, let's talk about what sex therapy is not. What is it not?
Well, it's not anything like what you've seen in a movie that's incredibly creepy. That's certainly the picture that I had in my head when I heard sex therapy before I became a sex therapist. And so I had this vision of something I didn't want to have anything to do with because it was weird and those folks were odd. And so I think that's probably an impression of most folks.
I completely agree with you. I can tell you from not being in the counseling world and more being on the client end of things, it really is this mysterious thing over somewhere else that you don't even, maybe it might be helpful, but you don't know if you really want to go in there. It's kind of a scary room. Okay, so let's talk about what sex therapy actually is in
Mhm.
reality and what it does for people.
Yeah, when I first got into counseling, I was working with a marriage counselor and sex therapist as part of my training and had no exposure to sex therapy whatsoever at that point. Thought it was obviously something odd. But as I sat with her and watched the couples that she was working with and saw really just the pain and the struggle that was a part of their life because of the difficulties they were having in this part of their relationship. People who went to church, loved the Lord, but were having difficulties in the sexual part of their relationship and oftentimes had for years. And that, whether that is difficulty connecting, differences in desire, where one spouse had a desire to connect more frequently than the other, and that created tension within the relationship, anorgasmia, not experiencing pleasure or orgasm within the sexual relationship, or pain, not just experiencing pain during intercourse or kinds of sexual connection that had broken down that connection that God designed to be something that brought them together and a strength within the relationship, instead was a point of weakness, a point of struggle, and at times an opportunity for the enemy to come in between them and break down their marriage. And as I saw that, one of the most tragic things or grievous things for me was that oftentimes the couples I was watching, I was observing, had struggled with this for years, that they didn't know where to go. They didn't know who to talk to be able to work through these things. And they could be worked through. I watched as this therapist was able to walk with them through the difficulties they were having and resolve the issues that they were having. And they were able to enjoy this part of their life and have it be an awesome thing and a positive thing. And there was this celebration about the progress that they had made, but at the same time, this a little bit of grief that, man, if we could have connected with a counselor, if we could have found somebody 10 years ago, how might have things been different? And as I sat in my training and observed that, I just felt the calling in that moment to be a part of that solution, so that less couples had to have that story where they were struggling, having difficulties that could be addressed, could be made better, but don't know where to turn, don't know where to go, who to talk to in order to be able to address those things in a way that's consistent with their faith and empowers their relationship and doesn't open the door to anything dangerous or destructive in their life. So that's really what Christian sex therapy is about. It's about being a safe place, a reliable place for individuals to be able to come to that are having difficulties in this arena of their life and get reliable, trustworthy, biblically grounded information that is able to resolve those issues and empower them to have a really healthy, vibrant sexual relationship.
I love that you used a Christian couple as an example because I think one of the misconceptions is that sex therapy is for people that have sexual addiction, pornography, some kind of addiction there, somebody that's experienced sexual abuse. And even though that is true, sex therapy does apply to those. It's also for couples that feel like they're having to figure all of this out on their own. And they may really love each other and be happy in every other aspect of their marriage, but this part they just can't quite figure out. Sex therapy is for them too, right?
Yes, there's this misconception that we have that, sex is a natural thing and therefore it should be easy. And that, that we should be able to come together, and certainly maybe as adolescents or young folks, that we have this hormonal drive and we feel that sexual desire and that energy and excitement and are looking forward to enjoying a passionate sexual relationship. And so there's this assumption that because of that, things will come naturally, it'll be easy, and there won't be any difficulties. And more times than not, that's not the case. And that pretty much all couples can share, if they were willing to, and that the difficulties of learning how to have a healthy, fun, passionate sexual relationship. And the way God's designed sexuality, it's something that does take practice. It's something that does take learning and growth and maturity for it to grow into something that's really wonderful and gets better year after year in the course of a relationship. And so, oftentimes we have folks that will come in and they had that expectation that it was going to be easy coming into marriage. And then when they find that that's not the case, they're a little bit disillusioned. I'm not sure they don't understand, is God punishing me? Did we do something wrong? Did I mess this up? Am I just inept or inadequate or broken in some way? Because surely this is easy for everybody else. And so that embarrassment and that fear kind of keeps them trapped in this space of not figuring out how to have things be better and different, or just not knowing whether or not what their experience is normal. And that they go, well, is this kind of it? Is it, is it supposed to be painful? Is it supposed to be so that I don't really have desire and don't want to connect and you would rather do other things? Is it, normal that my spouse maybe isn't interested in me, or is it because there's something wrong with me? There's all of these questions and fears that there's just not good, reliable information out there. Especially in the church community, oftentimes to help answer those questions, let alone troubleshoot them if they are present.
Yes. Well, one of the things that you say in the article is sex therapy is about learning to enjoy, be comfortable with, and feel good about the sexual part of your life. And that seems so much more down to earth and not odd or awkward. The way that, a lot of people think of what sex therapy is supposed to be for, and really what happens in a session and what its goal is. I feel like if anybody would go and read the articles that you have on MyCounselor.Online, and especially this one, it really makes the subject matter, which is very, can be very awkward and private and strange for people, realize that not only is it really a beautiful thing to try to reach a specific goal or be able to get to a point with your spouse where you're in unity together finally in this particular area of your life, but also the counselors, and I'm talking about you, Josh, and all your counselors here at MyCounselor.Online. I have talked to all of them that are involved in sex therapy. It is to them not like it is to you as the client. And I feel like that's something that's important for people to know. Talking about a healthy sexual relationship for you, and I'm talking actually to you, Josh, or for any of your counselors, when they talk about it, they could be it's almost like they're talking about when they went to the store the other day and they went and they picked up this, something that was on sale. It comes out that natural and that okay. And it really does kind of break that awkward tension that you feel like is going to be there. It's not, because the counselors are so comfortable in discussing it, and it makes the subject matter feel like it really is okay to approach and to be open about, because it's something that God intended to be good and wonderful. And people have professions like you do, Josh, that can get people there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. That's our belief is definitely that sex is God's idea and that he designed it to be good and a source of strength and something positive in people's lives. And so being able to have conversations when that's not the case and make that easy, natural, and just say, matter of fact, let's get it on the table. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's not working and why it's not working and what to do about that so that we can work through that together. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And we do it thousands of hours now. And so you feel like you're the only one that's struggling with this sort of thing because nobody really talks about it. And we keep this part of our life kind of secret, especially if we're having struggles or having difficulties. So there can be embarrassment and fear. But as a counselor, we have this conversation with hundreds of couples and walk this journey towards addressing things that aren't working the way that they desire them to, and find solutions and help them have healing and celebrate with them as we're able to do that. And so it's another day at the office for us.
Sure. Well, I wanted to talk to you about the couple aspect of it, because we've talked about how when it comes to counseling in general, when it comes to couples, it's not uncommon for one person, a spouse, to want to receive counseling or help, and the other spouse really not being interested or not wanting to quite go there yet. When it comes to sex therapy, I imagine that is a pretty big issue with some people. You have one spouse, especially when it comes to Christian couples, where you were taught that this is very private. What happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom. So what do you say to a spouse that is really desperately wanting counseling, but their spouse not only is not interested, but feels like that information needs to stay between them? What does that spouse do? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I would affirm just the sacredness of the sexual relationship between husband and wife and the private nature of that. And it certainly is God's design for it, that sexual relationship isn't intended to be a public thing, isn't intended to be something that is shared with others other than our spouse. And so the privacy of that and the protection of that is completely legitimate and is the way it's supposed to be in that. And so for your folks to have that feeling and have that question is one that they should have in that. And what I tell clients is that I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that are none of my business, because they're not my business in that. But if I'm going to be helpful to you, they're information that I need to have in order to be helpful to you, which is why we have the confidential environment of a professional counseling office that is protected by the ethics of our provision, legally protected, and is a safe professional dynamic so that we can discuss things that are of a personal nature and be able to be helpful to you in that without the risk of that getting out or being shared in a public setting or someplace that's not safe and protected like that. And so that's why things are structured the way that they are. In terms of what if my spouse has fears about addressing or doesn't think that they want to address the difficulties that we're having, I would put that in the category of personal responsibility. And that is, I'm responsible for my part of my relationship with my spouse and they're responsible for theirs. And I can't abdicate my responsibility for my part of our relationship because my spouse doesn't want to take ownership or address the things that are on their side of the fence. And so it's my responsibility to take the action necessary to address the things in our relationship that aren't working from my perspective. I can't make my spouse do that, and God wouldn't have us compel and pressure and manipulate our spouse into doing things. That we need to allow the conviction of the Holy Spirit to work in their heart and lead them to the place of being willing to engage that dynamic. But I can't allow their unwillingness to be an excuse for me not taking responsibility for our relationship, my part in it, and seeking out help to see if there's ways that I can engage our relationship in a way that improves it. And the fact is that if one spouse will engage, whether it's marriage counseling or sex therapy, that we're able to bring about improvements and changes to the relationship simply from one person deciding to take ownership of their part of things and making changes on their side of the fence. That does have an effect. It does have an impact. And very often what we see is when one spouse is willing to take that step and engage, then it paves the way for the other spouse to open up and engage also. That they see the positive changes that are coming from their spouse engaging the process, and it makes it inviting and safe for them to engage the process also.
I think that's a great answer. And this sort of thing, it's just, whenever you are approaching this by yourself, if that's the situation that somebody is in, it really does come from a place of love. I think it's amazing whenever you have couples that choose to go to counseling by themselves when their spouse isn't ready. That's beautiful commitment, and it's not deceiving or dishonest. I don't think in any way. It's what a huge step towards you wanting to better your relationship, and I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing. You have in your article, I absolutely love this. Don't let fear or embarrassment keep you from getting help or learning to enjoy God's gift of sexuality to you. And that's really a beautiful way to kind of wrap up the article, and certainly wrap up this discussion. If you guys want to read this article, I really recommend you do. You can go do My Counselor Online, and the article is called "What is Christian Sex Therapy?" And if you're at all interested in taking that next step forward, we really recommend you do it. Here at My Counselor Online, you can come into the office for a face-to-face visit, or for this particular subject, my device might be perfect for you, where you can meet in the privacy of your own home with your spouse or by yourself if you want to take that first step. We really hope you do. Josh, thank you so much for talking to me today.